Let's get into it. Coach Colin here. Sam Tripoli brings up something that I had to cover. It made me go, what? Hold on a second. Goggles that make it so you can see demons. I said, hold on. Is this real or is it just Sam? Is Sam just going too deep? You know, he's one of the few guys who can wear a tinfoil hat and still get as deep as we do with tinfoil Speedos on. He's very skilled. I look into it. It's real. It's a real thing that actually happened. Cliff High is going to tell us a little story about what happened in Vietnam when they were given an experimental technology at the time that were infrared goggles that saw in red. They had red. And because of this, the men were able to see not just better in regards to what's around them, they were able to see more in regards to the unseen. And many men experience this. So Cliff High is going to tell a story. I'm going to give you some background on that whole thing. But let me just prime you with a nice little intro here. Check it out.
Went to grab the soldier sitting behind him and pull him off the gun. Getting close enough to see him and pulling the goggles off his face, he saw that his eyes were wide, clearly terrified, and he asked him what he was shooting at. The answer he got back was certainly not what he expected. Over the noise of the aircraft, the gunner described what he saw. There was really only one word for it: demons. Demons flying alongside their helicopter. And the reason he shot them was because they were coming to get him. They were gesturing and pointing at him, clearly able to see him as much as he could see them. So he opened fire. Cliff never mentioned what his father said after that, but it seems obvious that hearing this man's response about what he was seeing through the goggles would not have alleviated any concerns he had about the guy being a heroin addict. But Cliff did say his father knew he wasn't exhibiting any of the usual symptoms of a drug user. It must have been a rather awkward flight back to base after that, as well as the debrief that took place once they landed, and the other pilots were asking, "Why the hell were you shooting at us?" But that gunner would not be the last guy to see something akin to monsters or demons through the red lenses.
Now, let's get into the Joe Rogan clip really quick, ladies and gentlemen, and then we're going to jump back into this story. Let's hear it.
All these new houses have glass windows as for walls. They're like, look at your amazing view through this glass window. I was watching like one of those home flipping shows, and they took out a wall and they just put a giant glass there. And the theory is that it's easier to look through that.
Oh.
And you know, now they've discovered that there's these mystery vans driving around that can look right through your walls and watch what you're doing. Is this too much?
How are they looking through your wall? What are they using? I know they can do it with Wi-Fi now.
Yeah,
right?
that's basically what they're doing. They just have this.
Wi-Fi is bananas. The fact that they have technology that allows you to see like 3D images in a room based on how the Wi-Fi is somehow or another like sending it back to them. Like what is Wi-Fi even doing to you? Like what is happening to you if this is just around you all the
100%.
time, passing through your cells?
Have you
and
ever
that they can
like
see it on a? I mean, the fact that they can see it, you know, like everyone's scared of radar machines, right? Everyone's scared of going through an X-ray, right? You don't want that radar machine.
the
X-ray
guy
machines.
giving you the
they give you a giant
X-ray
lead
is
shield
like
for your.
behind a giant wall protecting
They
it.
go fucking hide.
Yeah.
They go hide and they press the button, and we're just cool with Wi-Fi. It's just
It's
low
fast.
level. It's not as bad as an X-ray, but it's this weird low level signal that they say it fucks up bees, right? Or at least cell phone signals. They
And
say
birds.
that fucks up bees. Really?
I don't know if it's ever happened to
Have
you.
you seen this week or two?
I did. Yeah, new contact lenses give people infrared vision even with their eyes shut. Sci-fi style technology uses nanoparticles to convert infrared light into visible light that humans can see. Fucking yo.
How about those
Bro,
night
night
vision
vision
goggles
people.
that they had to change the color because they were seeing things that weren't on the radar?
What?
I think it was like red. They were
Like
doing.
aliens?
They were yeah.
Really?
They were seeing things flying around them, and they were flipping out because they had red night vision goggles, and that's why they changed it to either green or blue because the red.
things, when in red they show up. They don't show up in other colors.
Yes.
Jamie.
This is too weird, man.
The account of early night vision goggles used in Vietnam War revealing alleged demonic entities. Whoa. My dad did drugs and made up stories about Vietnam. That's perfect.
Yeah. I mean,
Also, I just distracted you from the tridactyls.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you.
So, quick clip. Let's just get into the meat of this story, because as soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh, well, I have to make a video about that. I mean, there's just no way that I'm not going to make a video about that. Really quick, I mean, just to give you guys the breakdown of what they were talking about. Yeah, there is going to be contact lenses that give you supervision, but let me tell you something. That actually pales in comparison to what Neuralink has planned for 2028, I believe. They have within Neuralink, there's going to be something called blind sight. So this is going to be for blind people at first, but the second some guys like, let me give it a whirl, it's just going to be a regular guy doing this. They're going to give people the ability to see infrared, Technicolor dream coats, black and white, old school cinema style. You know what I mean? It's just going to be like colors that we can't even comprehend or see right now. You're going to be able to comprehend and see. Maybe mistakenly, Neuralink might even touch on something that's like this story that we have here, the demon goggles. Maybe they might even do something like that. So the contact's pretty good, but Neuralink's going to blow that out of the water very soon. Now, let's just hear a little bit more about this, because there's some stuff with this story, right? Of course, a story like this. So I'm going to have this guy actually tell the story. Then I'm going to switch back to somebody who is retelling other parts of it. So there's a little bit of it that people try to debunk it. They try to debunk it, and this person explains why perfectly. The debunking that usually happens with this story is that the goggles had a chemical in it, and the chemical leaked out, and the guys were basically tripping, and that's why they had these hallucinations. But what's actually happening is they're merging two stories together, because way back in the day, in the 1900s, there was a man who had a pair of goggles, and it had a blue substance inside of it. And he was doing this in order to see people's auras. So this was an aura. This is the opposite of demons. He was trying to see people's angelic force, their electromagnetic force around them. And it was actually working. But when you're exposed to it for too long, the substance inside would actually give people all sorts of terrible symptoms. People merge these two stories together in order to shoo away what these men saw when they were in Vietnam. Just wanted to let you guys know that. But let's jump over to Cliff High as he explains this story. Cliff High is the son of the man that was running, lack of a better term, running the unit that actually took the goggles off. So many units were given the goggles. Cliff's dad decided, hey, you know what? Maybe you guys should be taking these things off. And they still got traumatized, but it wasn't as bad as other people. Listen to this story.
The technology of the gods. Now, another thing is that, as you know, Cliff, and as I've understood it, you are from military background, your father or something?
Correct.
Yeah. So
born into it, yes.
Yeah, so you know that world is always decades ahead of the white world. Now, Reagan, I think, was the first started to agitate for a Star Wars program. And that was when in the early 80s?
Yeah.
So you should assume that he wouldn't have clearing to do that if they weren't ready to launch some. Yeah. So that means that they've had about 30 years to tweak this stuff wherever.
And I know that this stuff exists because my father's role in the military brought him very close to it many times. So my father did 3 tours in the Vietnam War. And in his second tour, he was advanced enough in rank, and he was there, I think, 11 or 12 months. And when he was in country at that point, he's always been a field officer and came up in the military through the Korean War in a battlefield commission. And so, the military likes guys like him, and they let him be in charge of a couple of different projects. One of the projects that he was in charge of at the time was this technology that they introduced into Vietnam that almost brought the war to a standstill. Wow. And this technology was a night vision goggle. but it's not night vision as we have it now, okay? Because the night vision goggle was done in the red spectrum. And so when my father came back from
You
Vietnam...
mean infrared or
No. I'll explain.
ordinary red?
Oh, ordinary red. Okay. So instead of seeing, when you look at a night vision goggles now, you see green. Everything is
Right.
translated into green for you. And human eye sees green, more colors, shades of green than any other color. It's part of our evolution, our need to find food.
So that's clever then.
Correct. But see, here's the thing. It started off as red. And so the night vision goggles were introduced to helicopter pilots and gunnery people in Vietnam. And I won't hesitate as to I won't guess as to which year it was that they introduced them, but my father was part of this initial experiment with the troops that he commanded. And it was a disaster because the image was presented in red pixels, not green. And because of the technology being used at that time, it created very interesting effects that they could not deal with. So you had some officers that were part of this cadre or this cohort of other officers that were all testing these new technologies for the military that had their troops always use these goggles. And those units became self-destructive. They went down in a horrid situation. My father was extremely practical, didn't want to see himself get destroyed in any way, wanted to return and get out. So as soon as he saw what was going on with these goggles, he had his people take them off. And he actually got praise from the military for the way that he dealt with all of this. But the effect was this. A gunner in a helicopter would have no problem using these goggles. And only everything is showing up as a sort of a faint reddish image. And it was true night vision the way we have it now. And even a greater depth because you could also flip it and get an extra layer that was sort of yellowish that would be heat signatures as well. And they don't have those combined anymore in these goggles. Anyway, the goggles that were presented to the gunners, and my father tells the story of the very first time they're out with them, and they're flying along and he's in the front of the helicopter with the pilot. And all of a sudden, in a very peaceful area, not anything going on at all, the gunner in his on the starboard side of his helicopter starts firing wildly at their height, not at anything on the ground, but in an area that he was shooting at, and basically causing other helicopters in their little flotilla to have to react. And my father goes on back to the gunner, basically demanding, "What the hell, dude? What are you shooting at?" and the kid is just sweating profusely, and his eyes are just dilated beyond belief. And my dad thought he was dealing with another heroin addict, but this was before it had gotten really bad in Vietnam, and the kid was not exhibiting those kind of symptoms. He was reacting to what he had seen. And he's describing to my father that he was shooting at these basically flying demons that were flying alongside the helicopter. And he knew they were coming to get him because they were gesturing at him and they could see him. And so he reacted and he started shooting his Bren gun, big 50 caliber slugs at these things, right? And they were flying along right next to the helicopter. So he's firing out directly from the helicopter, and there are other helicopters in the vicinity. So it caused all kinds of problems. And this goes on repeatedly, week after week after week. Every time they try and use these night vision goggles, at some point they encounter monsters, true monsters. Now, officers had been told not to wear these. Okay, the pilots were told not to wear them. But my dad put them on to see what the hell was going on, and to hear him describe it, it was like being in the worst kind of a demonic Gothic hell.
Jeez.
That you'd look out at the tops of trees and you'd see these creatures with big wings and claws and everything come flying off of the tops of the trees. But you take the goggles off and there's not even a disturbance in the fog above the canopy of the trees, right?
They're perceiving into an aspect of consciousness.
Correct.
Another dimension.
And it was tied to the red image. As soon as they went to green, all of this kind of stuff disappeared.
Of course. And we don't have time.
Yeah, I know.
Me studying Pythagoreanism and vibrations, we could speak a lot about this, but let's not even go there. But one question: are these connected to the modern night vision goggles people use to see UFOs,
Correct.
third generation or whatever they're called? Is this the same technology?
It's the same technology. It's just that the translation is done through a different phase alignment, and we're not seeing everything that the goggles could show you. And
they don't connect it to heat signatures either, right? Organic.
They don't do that, and then they also don't do it with a red display. Now, the red aspect of it is interesting because the green display comes from electrons, not photons, okay? And it comes from an electron transmission. Presumably, they were still doing electron transmission. They were just turning it into a red filter.
That keeps it more material.
Exactly. And at this stage, though, in Vietnam, when they introduced him, it was brief. It lasted, the whole project lasted about 60 days, and then it was all canceled. And the people
Of course, it was so impractical.
Correct. I mean, your flotillas shooting at each other, right?
Suddenly they had a new enemy.
Right,
Don't let them know.
One that bullets didn't bother, right?
Please say you inherited one of these Googles from your father.
No.
Oh, damn.
No. That kind of stuff never happened. My dad was at a level of the military where we had to be very concerned because he used to do CID, internal criminal kind of investigations, right?
Yeah.
And so his clearances and stuff were always checked. So he was a by the book kind of a fellow insofar as the military was concerned at that level. I mean, we had our phones tapped, all of that kind of.
Okay, because I was ready to book a flight to Northwest America now. I just can't.
Well, apparently we would not want to do this anyway, because my father said that the single exposure, and in terms of him describing it,
made you mad.
The single exposure to the goggles that he would put on that one time had an unsettling effect on him for several weeks afterwards.
Right.
And the people that wore the red goggles, the gunners and these kind of people, were unstable at best for months. Many of them were cycled right out of the war as a result of this experience.
Yep, that so fits with the whole Vietnam War anyway. And you couldn't tell the difference. Everybody went crazy over there.
Right. But here, these guys had a real reason for doing it because of the images coming in and the radiation, probably.
But, I mean, imagine the energies letting loose in Vietnam at the time. No wonder that was attracting those kind of manifestations.
You're right. Now, maybe the manifestations are there continuously, always around us, but they just don't disturb us.
It's just a strata of reality, right?
Right, because we don't see them, right. And see, so here's the thing. Indeed, if we're looking at automated kinds of systems and so on, there's nothing to say that, we use projectile weapons, but that's not the only way to think of fighting wars and doing protective systems and so on. Some of them may be quite biological and indeed be mechanistic at a deep level.
And you could interact with these apparitions when you had the Google.
The apparitions could see you, and you could see them. That's what caused these people to think they were under attack by these beings, and to respond by shooting at them, because the things they were shooting at would point at them to each other and attempt to coordinate something.
Of course, it must have been a big deal, because normally we can see them, right?
Correct.
Look at that. That guy can see us.
You're up a couple hundred, exactly. You're up a couple of 100 feet in the air, and this thing's flying along, and it's pointing at you, and you look around, and then it points at you again, and you have that mind-to-mind connection. Right. Of course, you're going to freak out and start shooting.
Mutually, I bet.
Yeah.
And by the way, they are shooting in our atmosphere right now. With an ordinary Googles people use to UFO sightings.
Man, very interesting stuff. So they would see them. Could you imagine a world, and this is kind of, I guess, why we're blessed with not being able to see them at all times. I mean, it's good to know about them, good to armor yourself by, being clean, having good thoughts, trying to stray away from bad, lower emotions and things like that. But could you imagine a world where you could see them all the time? That would be absolutely freaky. And even as I thought of that, I was like, oh, I should look up to see if there's a video of someone who claims that they can see them. Now, this is Cliff High. This is like I don't know what podcast this is. Cliff High details in this crescendo. Yeah, like I don't know what this is, but it's a very interesting interview. He talks about that briefly, although I wish he would talk about it way more. I wish his dad was still around to also talk about it, but very interesting nonetheless. And it kind of makes sense. Like, what would happen with the military? What would the military do? They'd bring about this technology. They'd be like, give it a try. A bunch of people would see demons, and then they go, okay, just take it away. You didn't see anything. Okay, never mind what you saw, soldier. It was just the red. You just saw things with your eyes. But even his dad put them on so he could see what the guy was seeing. And he said you could see them everywhere on the tops of trees. And it makes so much sense to me that you would see it to that extent, because demons probably love war. They probably love it. It's the best thing. It has nothing but the deepest, most primal anger, the most wild urges I mean, you hear about horrific things happening in war. I mean, aside from the actual combat, there's all sorts of things that happen to civilians and all sorts of stuff. So it's probably it's probably a playground for them in regards to, again, we've talked about this before, how these demons, they actually prey on your emotions. They prey on your fear. That's another thing within war, how much fear, even within the people who are quote unquote winning, there's a tremendous amount of fear. They're feeding off that. People are passing away while committing the most wild atrocities at the same time. I mean, this is just, they're in a candy store. A war is a candy store for these guys. So it makes sense why there would be so many of them. That in my mind, that's why they were seeing so many. I gotta look up and see if there is people who see demons. Man, I know there's going to be some people in the comments popping up right now. Every time I want to look into something, I watch demons enter people. Footage of the devil. No, I don't want. I always do these episodes so late at night. What am I doing? Why am I doing that? I always do it late at night. Demons are not what you think. It's Michael Heston. No, so if you don't believe in demons, watch this. Nope, I believe in demons. So there's nothing there. But let's jump into the story. Like I told you, there's a little bit of people trying to explain away what was seen. In my mind, I'm doing episodes on the Book of Enoch and packs with Hollywood and this and that. So for me, this is very easy to believe. It just makes sense. There is an unseen world that is all around us all the time. So of course, there are things, demons, entities, beings that are just in this unseen world. There has to be. There has to be. And we know that the unseen world exists. We know that there are people over time who have tapped into this realm, made agreements with these demons. Even some people, it's been said that they've let these things into them so they could acquire knowledge and power and fame and fortune and all sorts of things. So for me, this makes perfect sense. And I mean, when else is a demon going to enter a person other than when they're at war? I mean, you're fearful, you're angry, you are like, being a soldier is very noble. It's very noble, right? To be able to put your life on the line like that for your country. It's an extreme feat. It's something that I just don't have it in me to do. But when you go into a place, whether it's other soldiers or innocent people or whatever, you kick in that door, you jump into that opposing trench, you are a demon. When you come through and you're lighting people up, that's all they see you as. You're the thing that came in and caused a massive amount of fear and made people disappear. They're going to look like you're when it comes to war, you're going to be a demon in someone's book, right? You might be a hero in your book over here, but you're going to be a demon in someone else's book. You're going to take someone's father. You know how it goes. So just saying. Now, listen to this part.
Color chosen for the first generation of passive night vision goggles introduced during the Vietnam War in the 1960s. But then again, if the red lenses caused terrifying hallucinations, or literally allowed men to see into another dimension, it's not like this would have been publicized, and maybe the men who experienced it largely refrained from speaking about it, as is the case with many strange experiences and encounters by military personnel who are hoping to maintain a reputation of sanity. Following the release of Cliff's story, there have been other Vietnam veterans, many of them helicopter crew members, who voiced their opinions about the story, saying they never encountered red night vision goggles and that helmet-mounted optics were incredibly rare at the time. Then, there's the reported use of dicyanin dye that, according to some versions of this story, was responsible for the goggles' distinctive red tint and supernatural qualities. But I listened to Cliff's interview, and he never once mentioned Walter Kilner or dicyanin. As with other bizarre stories, the story of the demonic night vision goggles seems to have been changed over the last few years of retellings. Since Cliff never mentioned dicyanin when recounting his father's story, it initially seemed that someone had intentionally or unintentionally combined the Walter Kilner story with this one, maybe to offer an explanation for why these goggles could see demons. But some of the information just didn't add up, for instance with Kilner's goggles being a dark shade of blue, not red. Strangely enough though, there might actually be a lot of documented truth behind Cliff's story about demonic night vision goggles. After some research, I stumbled across a very interesting document that seems to answer the question of where this story got mixed up. It's a research article published by the Department of History at the United States Naval Academy in 2017. It's titled The Secret of Seeing Charlie in the Dark, written by Richard A. Ruth. The subtitle is The Starlight Scope, Techno-Anxiety, and the Spectral Mediation of the Enemy in the Vietnam War. As mentioned earlier, the Starlight Scope was the rifle-mounted optic that was used in Vietnam from 1967 and onward. And again, it was the first passive optic used by the American military, meaning you didn't need an infrared spotlight to create light for the scope, but just enough ambient starlight or moonlight. The article is over 60 pages, but in short, the introduction of the Starlight Scope to soldiers fighting in a war was highly problematic. While the article does talk about the tactical advantage the scope gave soldiers, it primarily addresses how the scope imposed, quote, psychological and physical burdens on the users, creating anxiety and moral dilemmas. So what was the problem? Well, the overarching point is that these guys weren't used to being able to see at night, and now the scopes made it very easy to see in the dark. But everything was green, and the optic gave everything an eerie, ethereal look to it. It would have been the most unusual thing these guys had ever seen. While functionally useful, these guys were already run ragged by the war, and now they spent night after night, exhausted, staring at a green landscape that...
So that is part of the explanation. Now where the stories get mixed up a little bit, he actually touches on this. This is someone named Kilmer that actually develops these goggles. Let me go to the part that would make the most sense here. Check this out.
Slides treated with various chemicals and colored dyes that filtered out specific wavelengths of light. The idea was that if the right combination of filters was used, the human aura could finally be observed through these pieces of glass. A breakthrough was made when one of these slides was treated with a dye known as dicyanin. The dye is a derivative of coal tar. When applied to a screen, dicyanin has an interesting effect on light. It amplifies certain elements of the color spectrum that are otherwise invisible to the human eye. At the time of Kilner's experiments, the dye was commonly applied to photographic plates to sensitize them to infrared light, with other chemicals like ammonia being added to dilute it and change the sensitivity. Real-world applications included everything from analytical chemistry in detecting certain fluorescent substances to its more documented use in astronomy, since infrared photos now give researchers much brighter images of the night sky. Kilner is one of the few known scientists who used dicyanin for medical studies, and looking through the glass slides, now tinted dark blue by the dicyanin, the results were remarkable. While the dye reduced the human form to a featureless black outline, the blue screen clearly showed a glowing emanation that appeared to radiate several inches from the test subject's body. This, Kilner was certain, was the otic force that Reichenbach had spoken of, the natural energy field, or aura, as Kilner named it, that surrounded all living things. After coating some lenses with dicyanin and crafting a pair of wearable goggles, Kilner began to closely study these emanations. His many findings would form the basis of his published work, The Human Atmosphere, or the Aura Made Visible by the Aid of Chemical Screens, which was published in 1911. In it, Kilner describes the aura, breaking it down into 3 distinct layers: the inner aura, outer aura, and the etheric double. With the aura being invisible to the naked eye, he determined that was because it fell within the ultraviolet spectrum of light. On a scientific note, it's long been known that light exists as wave energy on the same spectrum as all electromagnetic energy, from very short gamma rays, aka radiation, on one end of the spectrum to the longer frequencies we use to transmit the music and broadcasts we hear on our FM radios. These are all measured by their respective wavelengths. Visible light falls on the spectrum just after microwaves and infrared, and is then followed by ultraviolet and X-rays. Again, Kilner believed the light produced by the human aura fell within the ultraviolet spectrum, so it's just a few wavelengths above what our eyes can physically detect. Some animals can see ultraviolet light though, including birds, insects, and certain mammals, quite possibly including our dogs and cats. So if we do have an aura, or more eerily, if spirits have an aura, our pets might be able to see them when we can't.
Man, you know what that makes me think of? It makes me think of and this happens with many people, when my baby was small. The baby, like, if you know anyone with babies, if you have babies yourself, they always kind of look off. Like, there would be so many times, oh, it's the freakiest thing. It gives me chills even talking about it, where the baby be looking at me, and I could, like, move. Baby still be looking at something. I'd be like, oh. I'd be like, where's your mother? I can't keep doing this. It was nuts. It was nuts. It would happen all the time when the baby was really, really small. But also, their eyes are not fully formed. And, I could also say their eyes are not on the spectrum that our eyes are on. They don't have, like, we always frame it as their vision isn't that good, but their vision is just different. And it's just coming online to what you and I know, what you and I can see. But before that, for months before that, their vision is different. They can see things. I think they can see things within the color spectrum that we can't see, just like they mentioned, ultraviolet auras and whatnot. I think they can see stuff like that. And I think also they're connected to the other side, because they are freshly born. They are freshly brought into life. And wherever we are before life begins, if you can even fathom what that is, wherever we are before that, they were just there. So I feel like they still have a connection to it. I feel like, whether it's reincarnation, or you've come down from source, or your soul has decided to go into this body, into this family, whatever that is, that's where you are. And I think that's where you are beforehand. And I think you're still connected to it when you're very small. That's why there's always small children that can remember other lives, because they're still connected to all of that in some weird, we just don't understand, just in some unexplainable way. So that's what that made me think of right there, right? Because cats do it, dogs do it, but people don't talk. It's freakier when babies do it, because you can just be like, dumb dog, silly cat. When your baby does it, you're like, are you good? Can you? Hey, can you explain what you're looking at? What are you looking at? Oh, it used to happen all the time. Oh my gosh. Ugh, gosh. Anyway, let's keep going. Why do I do this so late at night? Why am I doing this to myself?
According to Kilner's research, after testing multiple subjects, he noted that these human emanations he observed were all unique to the respective individual, the aura radiance either dimming or expanding when influenced by emotions or changes to the patient's health. However, one notable thing that Kilner warned us about is that the goggles he used to study these emanations were quite dangerous. Due to the toxic nature of the dicyanin dye, Kilner eventually discovered that long-term exposure to the chemical often resulted in intense eye pain, headaches, and even permanent vision loss. Because of this, Kilner advised that this eyewear should only be used as a way to gradually train the wearer's eyes, with the intention of the person eventually being able to see the energy fields without using the goggles. Following its release in 1911, Kilner's research generated a fair amount of publicity and interest, especially among the more spiritually minded readers. But it didn't take long for skeptics to start poking holes in his claims when...
So, I just wanted to play that because, one thing, if you notice that they said, was long-term exposure. So people have been mixing these two stories up, and understandably so. How many stories are there about goggles that can see auras and goggles that can see demons? Obviously, those stories are going to get mixed up together. You're going to, if you're with somebody and you've kind of heard one of these stories and they're like, you ever heard about the goggles that the guys in Vietnam and they could see crazy things? You're going to be like, oh, yeah. Even if it's the other story that you heard of, you're going to be like, yeah. Because how many stories like that are there, right? So this story's gotten mixed up together. But even so, it takes long-term exposure for those things to start happening to you. These men put it on, and right away they were seeing these demons, these wild winged beasts. The one thing he says he says a demon Gothic hell, a demonic Gothic hell is what he saw. Cliff High's dad when he put on the goggles. That's just like, Man, that would be a great invention to have now, because it would be such a good invention for people to just get a glimpse, just to get a glimpse into what hell could be like, just to get a glimpse into where, when you're a cynical, sad, angry person all the time, we could show you what you're feeding. Could you imagine you could see, because the same way people have guardian angels, right? Those guardian angels are assigned to you if you believe that type of thing. And if you don't, your guardian angel's just probably pissed. It's like, why God, why am I here helping this guy? He doesn't even believe it. He's an atheist. This is crazy. He said he's an atheist. I have to stay here. How long is he going to live? 94? Oh, this is ridiculous. You know what I mean? There's stuff like that going on. But the same way you have these guardian angels, at times, especially if you have dark, traumatic things that have happened to you in your life, you could have something negative attached to you. And could you imagine seeing that? You'd never sleep again. You'd never sleep again. If you just turn to the side right now. Ooh, I'm getting chills. Oh, your boy's getting chills. Getting chills even thinking about it. Getting chills even thinking about it. You look over and there's just this little thing, and it's like, and it's just sucking on your energy, like your aura. You have those other goggles, you can see your aura, and the thing's just like, you're like, get off of me. Get off of me. Get. What are you doing? It's just like, oh, you're so fearful. It's a bad visual. I know, but I said aura. The thing was sucking on your aura. I'm not nasty. You're nasty, because you thought of it a different way because of what my hands did. You thought of it like that. I didn't think about it like that. Okay? It's a PG show. Anyway, I think this is actually very real. I wouldn't doubt it at all. The military has had access to all sorts of technology, and they have access to it far before we, like those contacts. If you're hearing about them, that means there's been guys in the field putting those contacts in. You kidding me? Listen, you'll hear some guys talk about it. Cliff High's dad, et cetera, et cetera. You'll hear some guys talk about it. There's some guys in Delta Force where they're like, I'm not telling you anything. I'm not telling you the time that they stuck me with something and all of a sudden I could jump 50 meters in the air. I'm not telling you about that. I'm not telling you I'm not telling you that somebody replaced my eyeball and I've had Neuralink for the past 12 years. They're not. There's some guys in Delta. These guys are ghosts. They're men in black. They're not telling you a thing. They're not coming forward. These are squared away guys who just stay focused on the mission. They love what they do. They're not telling you nothing. No whistleblowing. So you can only imagine, right? Because when you have people like that, then the army could be like, well, does it work? It halfway works. What is it? It's a bionic arm. Okay. Hey, Johnson, you want a bionic arm? Sure. Left? You got a left one? Left, right? Okay. Yeah, give it to me. Let's see what happens. There's many guys that would do that. You kidding me? Easily. Hey, got your foot blasted off. You want it replaced? Yeah. Okay, you can't tell anybody. You got to sign this paperwork. Yeah, sure, whatever. Are you kidding me? There are some guys that just follow orders. They just straight up follow orders, Anyways, guys, just wanted to bring that to you. I find that wild, crazy. I think it's true. I definitely think it's true. And why wouldn't, here's the thing. Here's the reason why I think it's true at the end of the day. If we know, again, that there are people who access the unseen realm, we know they perform rituals to get access to the beings that are in this unseen realm. We know that there are people who are religious who access the unseen realm in the context of good. We know this is a normal thing. that you know millions of people do, whether it's on the side of the light or the side of the dark. You know people do this. So why wouldn't there be something that we could put in place, a chemical that could expose that realm to us so we can see it? We already know there's rituals, spells, prayers, all sorts of things that expose us to that realm. We already know that. Why wouldn't there be something that could physically let us see these things as well? Just makes perfect sense to me. Anyway, I'm out of here.